I am Angela Van Roy. I am the Neighborhood Services Program Manager for the City of Bloomington Department of Housing and Neighborhood Development. Welcome to all of you. This is the first workshop of the year. We'll see if we can come up with some more. If anybody has ideas for things that they want to know about, throw them my way and we'll see what we can do. We may reprise this if we have interest from others. This is being recorded, so I will make the recording available. If there are others who who might have been interested but missed it, so we will have that available. So, all right. So I'm just going to call on folks. If you just want to unmute and just say who you are, say what your neighborhood is, that would be great. So let's go to Ann first, and then Fran will be next.
I'm Ann Edmonds. I'm treasurer of the Arden Place Neighborhood Association.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, Fran, and then John is next.
I'm Fran Klinger, and I live in Evergreen Village, which is near RCA Park, if you're not familiar with our little place.
Thank you, Fran. John, and then Tiffany.
John Kennedy. I'm from Spicewood.
Okay, thanks, John. Tiffany, and then Jeff.
Hi, I'm Tiffany. I'm from Evergreen Village neighborhood.
Thanks, Tiffany. Welcome. Jeff, and then I'm going to leave Brent out of this. He can come on. He'll be coming on a little bit later. I'm starting off, so I'll let him eat. Jeff, go ahead.
Well, hey, I'm Jeff Parati, and I'm in Mayfair.
Great. Welcome.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Brent, are you?
I think I'm beyond the not safe for work stage here. So I'm Brent Pierce. I'm the assistant director at Hand. I work with Angela, and happy to be here and talk with neighborhood folks about some potential opportunities and kind of some ways to share some ideas about fundraising and organization and all the above. So I'll kind of let Angela run point here, but thank you all for your time this evening.
All right, thanks, Brent. Yes, thanks everybody for coming. So we're going to start out. Let me just share my screen here. Let's see. Okay. Are you all seeing that? Yes. Okay, great.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to be talking about fundraising for neighborhood associations. We're going to start from the very beginning of what that looks like and sort of the preparation that you would need in order to make use of some of these the programs that we're going to be talking about. So that's where we're starting from. There we go. Okay, so today we're going to specifically be talking about incorporation of your organization, about seeking nonprofit status, often referred to as 501c3, which is something from the federal government. Also, 2 state programs that we would like to make you aware of that may be useful for fundraising for neighborhoods, and those are 2 state of Indiana programs. The first one is the Neighborhood Assistance Program, the second one being the Economic Improvement District Program. Okay, so the first step is setting up your organization to maximize your opportunities. Now, this is probably going to be review or just unnecessary for some of you because you've already got an established organization. But the first thing is you need to organize. So if you haven't already done that, you're going to have a meeting of your constituents, your neighbors, determine your officers, what titles, what offices you want to have on your board, what the responsibilities will be, and elect some members. All of these things are important because you're going to have to include these names on your applications for some of these things. The other very, very important step is to establish bylaws. One of the things that you may not find in your typical neighborhood association bylaws is a specific requirement that asks you to have a provision in writing for what you will do with any assets that are in your bank account should the organization be dissolved at some point in the future. So what the note that I have here is to be sure to review the specific instructions in the 501c3 application, because that is one of the provisions. Those are the kinds of things they're going to ask you. If you don't have these in your bylaws, you must add a provision for something like that. So just make sure that if you have bylaws existing, that you tweak them so that they are pertinent to the application for which you are including them. And then the other thing is to have a statement of purpose. And again, if you're going to be seeking nonprofit status, you do want to make sure that it's relevant to that, that you're, a community organization, not-for-profit, that you're designed to, improve the quality of life, safety, whatever things in your neighborhood. So those are kind of things to think about. Okay, so the very first step is that you will need to have a federal employer ID number. It's like a social security number for your organization. It's the way that the IRS knows who you are. That will be permanently associated with your organization. Doesn't cost anything to do that. It's a simple form. I'm going to send this to each of you, the text of this, so that you can have these links, so you can follow the links. And I've got a bunch of resources at the end as well, and that way you can follow some of this to get more information. So that's a link to the actual form there. So the first thing is the federal ID number. And then once you've got that, you can start on incorporation. Incorporation is not terribly complicated. The application is only 2 pages. The benefits of doing this would be to, actually, hold on one second. I just want to look quickly to see if I have anybody else who's in the waiting room, since I can't see the meeting controls when I'm sharing my screen. Brent, can you take a look and see if there's anybody who's trying to get in? Can you see whether or not there's anyone in the waiting room?
Angela, I had trouble getting in from one of the emails that I received.
Oh, did you?
But the link wasn't working, but I did get through on the hand update. So
Oh, no.
it might be,
That's not good.
I don't know.
Okay, so I just made,
Angela, I can't see anybody who's
all right. I
who's trying to get in.
It just suddenly occurred to me that I can't see any of that stuff, and someone could be sitting there. All right, thanks. Okay, so the benefits of incorporating would include formalizing the governance and the responsibilities of your organization. Oh, hold on a second. I just got a notification someone wanted to come in, so that works, I guess. Okay. It limits, a big one is that it will limit the individual homeowner liability. If you have an organization that's incorporated, you are a business, especially if you have a situation where you have dues or are collecting donations and you have money. If you don't have the ability to have an organization that's incorporated, you won't be able to have the third thing on that list, which is a bank account in the organization's name. You're going to have a bank account in somebody else's name. Some individual will have to take on the liability of having that money in a personal account. So it's great to avoid that. The last bits of information there are just the name of the actual form you're going to fill out is the Articles of Incorporation for a nonprofit corporation. That is the form number and the link to get to it. Actually, the link there is a site that has a lot of different business forms, and that one's the first one on the list. And there's a $30 filing fee for that if you file online. If you file by paper, it's, I think, $60, so it makes more sense to do it online. All right. Okay, the next bit, once you're incorporated, you can apply for nonprofit status, so the 501c3 status. This will be with the federal government. The benefits of being a nonprofit organization include being able to apply for grants from the government or from other programs. A lot of programs would love to give you money, but they won't give you money if you're not a nonprofit. So there's a lot of opportunities open up once you have that official status. You also are income tax exempt and sales tax exempt. So if you have a project and you're purchasing items for that project, you don't have to pay sales tax, and that can add up. So that's a bonus. It also does incentivize donors because donors can write a donation off to on their taxes. So that's always a bonus for people or businesses who are willing to give money or in-kind contributions. So the other thing, there are 2 forms. One is the 1023, the IRS form 1023. That is the long form. I do believe from looking at the eligibility requirements that neighborhood associations should be eligible to fill out the easy form. There are two bonuses to this. First, it's a lot shorter and a lot less complicated. Second is it costs less than half of what the filing fee is for the regular. The regular form is a $600 filing fee. The easy form is a $275 filing fee. So that's a lot easier to swallow. But the eligibility, I do have the link there that has all of the instructions for the easy form, including many, many pages at the end of it that include all of the very specific things that make you eligible. So my recommendation would be to make sure you go through all of those carefully to make sure your organization is indeed eligible to file that form. Okay. So once you've got all, that's all the housekeeping, right? It's a lot to do just to get to where you want to be, but it's worth it in the long run. It will be some work. It's a commitment that organization will take on, and it'll take some time and just cost a little bit of money, but it would be worth it because it allows you then to take advantage of some of these other opportunities. So I'm going to hand it off to Brent, and he's going to talk to you about these organizations, these two different programs that the state of Indiana offers.
All right. Anybody have any questions or comments from what Angela has presented up until now before I jump into the state programs?
Yeah. Arden Place is not incorporated. We do have bylaws and we have a federal ID number, and that was enough to get us a bank account with the neighborhood association name. And we did have to show the bylaws, and we did have to, the officers had to come in and sign forms and papers, but we did not have to be incorporated to get the bank account in the association name.
When you filed for the federal tax ID number or employer ID number,
Yeah.
How did you file that?
I don't remember the details. There was a form and I filled it out. And
so is the federal ID number tied to you as an individual or as?
It's tied to the neighborhood association.
Okay. But not as like a formalized entity.
I just don't remember it being that complicated.
Yeah, no, is that, well,
it's been, like 10 years ago. And I remember that I found a form and I filled it out and they sent me an ID number. And the bank wanted to see the bylaws.
Yeah, I would recommend looking in. Yeah, I'd recommend looking into seeing who or what that number, the federal ID number, is tied to. If you filed as an individual, or if you were able to demonstrate that there was an organization simply with a.
Well, I mean, the bank looked it up. The bank looked up the ID number and was willing to set it up. That's how they verified that ID number went with the neighborhood association before they set up the bank account with that ID number and that name. Yeah.
I would look into it, and as far as what that number is tied to. Very typically, there has to be some sort of entity set up as opposed to an individual petitioning for a federal ID number for there to be one issued. I think we're talking about two different things when we say nonprofit incorporation versus simple, state Secretary of State incorporation when it comes to setting up a neighborhood association.
Right. We do not have nonprofit status. Not officially.
Yeah, and that's another. That's beyond just simple incorporation. Pursuing a nonprofit 501c3 status as opposed to setting up a neighborhood association as sort of an entity with the state, which typically allows you to, have a bank account associated with an organization versus somebody as an individual. And it isn't a complicated process to go through the Secretary of State's website and set.
Yeah, maybe that's what I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth looking into for sure. If you come to find that it's set up through you and as an individual versus an organization, it might be worth looking into seeing how you can convert that into an organization, incorporation versus it be all residing with you. But if it's been 10 years, I would just go back and look, and if you have any documentation or whatever that might be to demonstrate, what it.
I don't know that I'm that organized, but
That's all right. Yeah, I mean, you could actually go through the state Secretary of State. I think it's sos.in.gov, and you can look and see, sort of by a name search, what entities have been set up, and if it's in the neighborhood's name, it might even pop up upon a simple search. So that's something to look into. It's a nominal fee to set up through the state anyway, an incorporation, and I think like Angela presented earlier, there's advantage to that in the way of setting up, a separate finance structure that's associated with the organization versus individual homeowners. You've got your associated with the incorporated entity a set of bylaws, and you've got your officers and your board members and the terms set, and so it's a way to formalize the neighborhood and the coordination that takes place with regular meetings and fundraising and spending for neighborhood priorities, that sort of thing. Yep.
well, maybe I did incorporate it then, and I didn't realize I was doing that. Could be.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly look into it if I was you, Am, and just kind of see what documents are I guess established for whatever form that the neighborhood set itself up as.
Yeah.
And so kind of dovetailing with the idea of incorporation, and then specifically nonprofit status, the state has an Indiana state income tax credit program, which allows individuals to contribute to nonprofit neighborhood associations and then receive a 50% tax credit off of their personal income taxes. And then so it can be a fairly generous incentive to encourage dues paying, but also contributions for special events or fundraising for neighborhood organization benefit, as you sort of see fit. And so the neighborhood would, per the presentation here, you'd have to sort of define your boundaries and be sure that the neighborhood is collecting dues based off of those boundaries. But it's the state's way of saying, hey, if you contribute to your neighborhood, you can knock off, for whatever donation that you give, 50% of that will be taken off of your state income tax liability. So when I lived in Indianapolis very recently, I was in a neighborhood called the Old North Side, and we raised significant amounts of money this way, which again allows contributors to not only donate to their neighborhood, but also personally receive a tax benefit for it. The website is included in the PowerPoint here, as well as a NAP at a glance kind of fact sheet. So I've seen it in person used to benefit a community that I used to live in. So I know it can be advantageous. Not a whole lot of neighborhoods know about it, but again, you have to be a nonprofit entity to collect those donations and then offer the donor that tax benefit.
And so just to be clear, you said we have to set up boundaries. Are you talking physical boundaries of the neighborhood? Or are you talking like rules?
Right. So whenever you set up not rules, like physical boundaries. So
Okay.
if you And let me clarify, the donations can come from anybody. So if you happen to have a generous donor, and I think there might be some confusion there with the language, but if somebody wanted to contribute to the neighborhood 501c3, they would enjoy that tax benefit. Maybe they have they used to live there, or there's something, a park or something within the neighborhood that they want to see do well. It's just a way to encourage donations to benefit the neighborhood. And there is sort of a enumerated list of kind of broad categories of projects at the state website that you can see if you go there. But, very typically, it's some sort of recreation or, community revitalization. It's nothing that's incredibly specific. So I would suggest folks have a look at the state website, but yeah, as long as the neighborhood entity that's set up as a nonprofit, receives those funds and goes through the state, and lists the donor as a participant in the NAP program, and lays out how the neighborhood intends to spend the funds, that's the donor can get that 50% state income tax credit off of their state income tax liability.
So one other question is that just if they're an Indiana resident, the donor, or does this transfer to other states?
Well, you'd have to pay state income tax.
Right, but if the donor was from California and they donated to Mayfair in Indiana, they'd still get the credit?
Now, again, it's not for federal. So if you for whatever reason, as an individual, say you're a snowbird or something, right, and you live elsewhere but not enough out of the year to pay that state's income tax, if you have any state income tax liability in Indiana,
okay,
my
so
understanding,
it only applies to Indiana.
oh yeah, I'm sorry, only Indiana personal state income tax.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Frank, can you talk a little bit about just like how it gets set up? So the application is to the state, right? The neighborhood will apply to the state and define what it is they're wanting to raise money for, right? Just sort of.
That's right. And there's a sort of max or finite allocation that the state distributes to, around the state. So it's not like there's an infinite amount of this money. That being said, I was involved in a neighborhood, like I said, in Indianapolis that, raised north of $15,000, for it. And each donor was able to take advantage of that state income tax credit. So it's a generous program. And like I said, not a whole lot of folks know about it from what I could tell. But yeah, the neighborhood association entity has to file paperwork with the state, and that's all present on the website that is listed in the presentation. And every donor, just like I think any sort of nonprofit paper trail, has to receive from the neighborhood entity how much was donated. You're participating in this program, and that form I believe is as well on the state website. So, it can, if it catches on, even at a small scale, if it encourages some folks to give money to the neighborhood, I think that's a good thing. I think, we talked I think in a previous slide or two about the incorporation of a nonprofit. Angela and I talked earlier about the possibility of some of our hand department simple grants going towards neighborhoods who want to incorporate as a 501c3. So I think we still need to check some boxes internally, but that could be a source of funding to offset, what can be, a little costly to file for that 501c3. So I think it's something that the city has an interest in encouraging.
Okay, you want to go to the next one? Are there any
Yeah.
other questions about that program?
So are you saying then we might be able to get the $275 from a simple grant? from this year.
When we talked earlier today, and I don't want to get way out in front of myself, but given it's a city administered grant program and we don't have some of those state or federal restrictions, Angela and I are of the impression or belief that the 500 or less simple grants from city hand could go towards the cost of that. Was it 1023, Angela, the easy form to file for nonprofit?
And then $30 for the incorporation. So if you wanted to go for it and get yourself set up that way, I think that would be something we could probably.
Yeah. So, roughly $305 to incorporate and then file for nonprofit status. We would, I believe we're in a position to consider those requests under the simple grant program.
Anybody else? All right, let's go to, come on. There we go.
Okay. So the Economic Improvement District, or EID, is a way for neighborhoods that either it's all residential or includes some commercial to basically apply an additional fee on top of local property taxes to themselves. And that money accumulates, which is controlled by the controller's office, but it amounts to a fund that the neighborhoods can use annually for projects that are neighborhood specific. So those funds can only be used within the neighborhood. It acts effectively, everybody shies away from the word tax, but effectively a user fee, right? So if you live in the neighborhood, you can voluntarily assign yourself a user fee that is administered by the city, so you can use that money in any way that you see fit within some statutory limitations. There are pretty good examples of this program. If you look online, Plainfield has an economic improvement district that is sort of a commercial-oriented one. The example that I like to point to is Woodruff Place in Indianapolis is a 100% residential neighborhood that entered into or agreed to enter into an EID probably 8 years ago with a budget which determines how much each individual property owner pays annually, and then a board's associated with the funds, and they they've done a lot of great cool things within their neighborhood that that other neighborhoods aren't privy to because they haven't signed on to do this. The state legislature made it more difficult last year to do this. Previously, when the law was first passed, 51% of property owners had to agree to the additional fee for the EID, and 51%. So it's a little bit nuanced, right? So of the 51% of property owners, if you're only at 50% plus one, that majority also has to make up a majority of property valuation. So, but they upped that to 60% this past session, and so it's a difficult barrier to cross. There are some neighborhoods, where it might make sense. Some neighborhoods maybe not, but we're throwing this out there as a state law possibility for neighborhoods to agree for an additional, and over the course of a year, depending on what you want your budget to be, it doesn't necessarily add up to a lot of money, but that is distributed to the neighborhood from the city controller's office, and you get to use that money as you see fit. So again, there's the state code is listed there within the presentation. What we should do, Angela, is send out the Woodruff Place. They still have on their neighborhood association website the process that they went through to do it. It does take kind of a campaign.
It's on the bottom.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So
there's they've got some good information on there about what they do with it.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, you are asking your neighbors to pay a bit extra in, in the way of, a user fee for the neighborhood, but that money goes directly into paying for what you all want to get done with the neighborhood. And candidly, if you're 50 or if you're 60% plus one, and you meet the threshold for both ownership and valuation, the other 39% still are contributing to that because you pass state law muster to create that EID. So it's a way to leverage the valuation of your neighborhood and the volume of property ownership to create a fund that allows you to spend money that, think about taxation. You're talking about funding all kinds of different special taxing districts, schools and libraries and fire and police and all that, which obviously is very necessary. But this pool of money goes specifically to your neighborhood. It's not one penny of it goes anywhere else.
And Brent, this is something where again, the neighborhood is defined by the people who are opting in, right? So the group of people that they go to the state and say, hey, we want to have a district here. It doesn't necessarily have to just be one neighborhood. It could be maybe if there's, a neighborhood park, or there's something that, like, there are multiple neighborhoods surrounding it, or there's some kind of entity that is of use to multiple areas, maybe more than one. It could be defined larger than a neighborhood, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you could actually partner with adjacent neighborhoods to make this happen if you wanted to, where you could, carve out boundaries that include a couple of different neighborhoods. It really, and I would need to look to the code to see if there's a minimum amount of owners and or property valuation. I don't think there is, but we could look into that. But yeah, Angela, you sort of get to be deliberate with how you create the boundaries versus them already being defined by, how the city sees your neighborhood, and its boundaries. So but the difficulty is in the legwork. I know Woodruff Place spent 2 years going effectively door to door to get people on board to do this. That being said, if you go to their website, they have done a lot of neat stuff up their neighborhood in Indy, and raised on an annual basis sizable amounts of money for what they want to do.
Is there a neighborhood in Bloomington that does this already? I mean, you keep talking about Indianapolis neighborhoods. Are there any neighborhoods in Bloomington doing this?
Well, there's only one in Indy. I mean, that's why I'm saying it's not a common. It's just difficult to start. Now, no, not to my knowledge. Is there a Bloomington neighborhood or area that does this, unless there's a commercial district that's done it. Plainfield did it on the near Indy West side because they wanted to invest in infrastructure for transportation of goods and people for jobs and in and out of the city. So there's different ways you can go about utilizing it. But short answer, Ann, I don't know of a predominantly residential neighborhood in Bloomington that's done it. So, go be the first.
I don't think. Yeah, we do have a neighborhood association.
Mm-hmm.
The adjoining neighborhoods don't even have mailing lists.
Yeah.
It's not that. I don't know how much. I mean, I think we could incorporate easily enough, but I don't think. I don't even see the advantage of the 501(c)(3), to be honest with you.
Well, and again, what we're presenting here is for informational purposes only.
Yeah.
It's just, ways that we've seen, neighborhoods have some success, and just kind of tools that are out there if they want to be pursued, and if not, it isn't a big deal.
So the one in Indy that does this, is it like a really big neighborhood?
No, it's not actually. It's a historic neighborhood, and so they sort of have their own unique aesthetics and some sort of kind of like flowered medians and just that they wanted to upkeep because the city was not going to do it, and so it kind of came down to neighborhood specific efforts that if they didn't raise the money to do it, then it just wasn't going to be maintained and sustained. So I would encourage you to go look at that. The website, the link that Angela's included, because it's a really neat breakdown. It tells you how many property owners are in the neighborhood, what the budget is, what the process was for them to go and set everything up. It has to go through the city council for approval, and the controller's office maintains the funds. It's, it can be obviously like a bit of a headache to get going, but you ask folks who are active in that neighborhood and they're really happy with how it turned out, even though it was a heavy lift to get done.
And Ann, you said that adjacent neighbors don't have address lists. We're right next to you in Mayfair, and
Do you have a mailing list? I mean, Greenbrier doesn't, and Beechwood Manor, which is Thornton Drive, don't either one of them have mailing lists. Does Mayfair?
Jeff, you're muted.
I'm sorry. So yeah, Ann, if you want to reach out to me, my email's in chat.
Uh-huh.
Feel free. Just next door. So
Yeah, I know Mayfair used to have a neighborhood association in the 80s, but I think they gave up on it for some reason.
I'm muted again. Sorry. It kind of fell into disarray, and we've kind of resurrected it in the past year or so.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it.
So yeah, feel free to reach out and we can chat.
Good.
All right. Does anybody have other questions specific about this stuff or anything? Any other concerns, things you want to bring up? These are just two programs that that Brent knows about because of his experience living in Indianapolis, where they have used these things. But there are lots of other opportunities out there. So, if you want to go to the trouble of doing the 501c3 status, it does open up options for fundraising in a lot of other ways, including, organizations, private organizations that give to nonprofits. Even the tax credit program would give you the opportunity of going in and seeking funds from businesses or other foundations, and the places they're going to get a tax benefit for it. So it behooves them to, if they have any interest, if they're somehow, especially a local business, someone that's maybe close to your neighborhood, or just has an interest for one reason or another. But anyway, just one more option to try to raise some money if you have projects that you're working on or ongoing needs. So that's all we have. If there's not other questions, I'm actually just putting a link to the slides on the Neighborhood Association's website on the city webpage. So those will be available there. That has all the links and the resources that we talked about that were in there. And hopefully give you some good information if you want to pursue any of these.
Well, and honestly, if we accomplished tonight was connecting Ann and Jeff, I think this was time well spent. So we certainly appreciate everybody taking some time this evening. I know it kind of gets a little bit late about this time, but to Angela's point, our contact information is out there. Feel free to visit the links within the presentation, and we're happy to make ourselves available and answer any questions. If you, I know in the age of COVID, it's tough to kind of get out and about and mingle with neighbors and all that, but if it but if some of this stuff resonates with folks, again, we can regroup another evening and talk through some things. Or if anybody else comes across anything that may also be a benefit. I think we're sort of here to help neighborhoods kind of, I don't know, be what they want to be. So again, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, and thank you. Great information. And Anne, reach out.
Yeah, I will do that. Are you going to put a link to your PowerPoint somewhere so that, because that included links?
Yes, that's what I just said. I've downloaded the slides as a PDF, and I'm putting them right now on the Neighborhood Association's webpage on the city website.
Okay, right, because I'm looking at that and I
Oh, are you?
don't-
Okay. Yeah, I haven't. You're too fast.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Nice to meet everybody. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.